Time for some action.
Hey guys, this is the Foff of the Foff Guy. Basically, I'm doing another interview, this time with Warren Wulff, who just happens to be a head librarian at a very important Vancouver-based center. So I think you might find it quite interesting. And if you got any comments, or you want to like and subscribe, go ahead. Have yourself a great day, guys.
Okay, Warren, thank you very much for you being on my show. I appreciate that. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thanks, Jamie. It's good to be here.
Excellent. So I get usually what I start with is every interview is what's your educational background, starting from you're younger to right now?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. So my educational, I did K through 12, regular public schooling here in British Columbia, in the lower mainland of Vancouver, as well as on the Sunshine Coast. And after I graduated high school in 1997, I went to University of British Columbia for 4 years, and I did a Bachelor of Science degree in animal biology, and I finished that in 2001. And I worked a little bit for the Canadian government, short-term basis. And then I decided to change career paths, and I decided to become a teacher. So I went back to UBC and did a supplemental Bachelor of Education degree, which is a one-year degree. And so that was from 2003 to 2004.
Is that like a bachelorette almost? Is that very similar?
So, it's considered a full bachelor's degree. Okay. Even though it's so the way it kind of works is two ways. In the old days, old days, you would, of course, to become a teacher, you would have not even gone to university. They had what were called normal schools, named after an actual guy named Mr. Normal, like who actually invented like this teacher training method. So they're called normal schools. And you went to that, not like right, you could go right out of high school basically and learn how to become a teacher.
Yeah.
For elementary school, especially, usually high school, you would need to do an undergrad degree, like in science or something like that, and then do a normal school. It changed, and then for many decades, it was you would, if you wanted to become a teacher, you'd actually do a 5-year degree called the Bachelor of Education degree, that it would incorporate an entire degree in whatever field, either that's history or English literature or science. But at the end of 5 years, you get one Bachelor of Education degree.
Oh, okay.
But that didn't work so well for people who decide to become teachers later on, because it's like it becomes a little wonky then. Like, you've already done a degree. Let's say you do a degree in engineering.
I got you.
And you're already 4 years in. How do I then want to be a teacher? How do I go and then become a teacher? So they split it up. So by the time I did it in the early 2000s, it had been split into two separate degrees. You do your standard degree, and then you do the extra 1 year on, and then they'll give you a second degree. Even though it's a year, it's considered a full bachelor. So sort of a long answer to your question. It's sort of, that's the history of how.
And at least more people know, or my viewers know, right? I appreciate that. That really helps out. But what else did you have? You got a master's too? Did you or not? Which
Yes.
After the bachelor's, did you get a master's?
Yeah. So I had a bachelor's in science, and then that was in 2001 at UBC. Then I have my Bachelor of Education in secondary, like high school science teaching, from 2004 from UBC. And then that granted me a teacher's certificate, so I was legally able to teach. And then I taught in the United Kingdom, specifically in Scotland, for 2 years, from 2004 to 2006.
How was that experience? Or was it a pretty good experience? Or
Yeah, it was. It's tough being a new teacher, and you're working away from home. I went primarily because at that time it was hard to get well, certainly a permanent position in British Columbia was difficult
Yeah,
in the early 2000s.
yeah, you probably end up like doing what do you call it, substitution, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's what they call teacher on call.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's funny. So like I went to the UK, and instantly I was like a permanent teacher. Like you're in regular classes, and by my second year, I was basically the top biology teacher. And because the other biology teacher had retired, and so like I was there taking like the biology program by the end of my second year, and but 2 years my visa was done, and I had my experience, and I was happy to come back to British Columbia, where I continued teaching. And then ironically, I was back into the situation of it's hard to get a job. So like I went from being like a permanent teacher with some responsibilities like teaching like higher grades in biology, and then by the time I was in BC, I was down to like teacher on call. So I did teacher on call and some short-term contracts for 2 years, and then I decided to shift gears to my current career.
That's where you taught at my school. I remember that at Fleetwood Park.
Yes, I taught at Fleetwood Park for 4 months. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I taught at Fleetwood Park for 4 months, largely grade 8 and grade 10 science. Yeah.
Awesome.
So now I do, to answer your question, I do have a master's degree. So what I did for that is that I have a master's degree in library science.
Yeah.
I decided to, in 2006 to 2008, I was teaching back in British Columbia. In 2008, I decided that at the time it was still going to, for the foreseeable future, be difficult to get a permanent teaching position in BC. Yeah. And so I decided to change. And to do that, I wanted to have a career where, like you see, I really like education. I like teaching. And I have the skills for teaching, I think, and I have the science. And I wanted to then continue having a career where I had a lot of transferable skills. Like I didn't want to have a complete break where everything I had done and everything I had learned was not then transferable into a new career. So I started by speaking to a lot of people who had various jobs.
Which is a good idea.
Yeah, to see like friends from university.
Recommend it for everybody. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or a mentor or something like that who's been there and says, "Hey, this is what you got to do," right? That's exactly what people got to do, right? That's a smart plan. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So I spoke with a variety of individuals who had different careers that I might be interested in, touching on biology. People that I knew, people I personally knew from my undergrad and high school years. And one of my friends, Sarah, she is I think she's always probably known she wanted to be a librarian, and she was a librarian. And so I spoke with her for about half an hour about her job and whatever. And that gave me enough of a hook that like I realized it was the type of thing where I could be someone who provides education to those who wish to come into a library or a library situation. Like these days, coming into a physical library is a little bit difficult with COVID, but so the library experience can be also to some extent experienced online. But the way I saw it, I could be that person who helps people seek the information that they're looking for to further their own learning. And so that seemed like a good fit. And I was fortunate enough to take I had a very nice librarian agree at the University of Victoria. She agreed to allow me to shadow her for a day. And so I went to UVic for a day, and I got to really see what being a librarian is for a day, and I really liked it. And after that, 1 day shadowing, it was enough that I applied. And I went to the University of Western Ontario, now just called Western University. And I did my master's in library science, library and information science, the MLIS, Master of Library and Information Science.
Yep.
Now, that was from 2008 to 2010. So I had that is a sort of an overview of my education from when I was a kid all the way through and coming out the other end.
Quick question: how long did it take to do the masters? Is there a certain amount of time? Or was it, what was it, 2 years, 3 years? Was it 2 years or something? Or
Well, every master's is different. Mine does not require a thesis. It was a course-based master's. Yeah, so some people decide to do a thesis, but usually, if in my so I did 2 years. It was possible to do my degree in 1 year, but that wasn't suitable for me because I didn't have prior library experience.
yeah,
So there were individuals who had come in who had already been working as library technicians or library pages or library assistants, or had been working in libraries since they were very, very young, and they had been working all the way up, and then so they had plenty of experience. My experience working in a library before I went to library school was literally I worked part-time at my elementary school library when I was in grade 3 and grade 4.
oh, so that'll get you a library degree, right? Just do grade 3.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to go to master's degree when, like, you're introducing yourself in like a master's seminar, and people are saying things like, oh yeah, well, I have like 20 years experience working in like this public library, and I like worked as a technician. Well, I have technicians training, whatever. And then it gets to me, and I'm like, my prior library experience is when I was like 8 or 9 years old, working in elementary school part-time after school for half an hour, and I sorted books and like checked them in and went to the card catalog and shelved them. But I was single digits in age, and it was interesting for sure. So that's how, you don't have to have any library experience to get in. Like, they don't ask for that.
Yeah.
But my library experience was pretty comical in that it was like, I was less than 10 years old, and that was when I was getting my experience, and that was it. So to answer your question, my master's degree was longer because I needed to break up my courses by taking co-op terms. So I had to apply and get in to do co-op.
I heard co-op is pretty good. It's a really good experience. If you get, and sometimes you end up getting hired, right? Is that what happened there, or?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So at Western is a real shotgun experience to get into co-op. They have a whole program for it. So like, it's not like your typical co-op experience where you kind of are like, well, you can go and like apply, and we have like you can go and apply, but it's more or less like a regular job interview, and like, good luck to you. They really Western does a really nice job. And if you're not aware, Western University is in London, Ontario, about 2 hours southwest of Toronto. So I had to drive across country and get a place to rent and live there and everything. Western does a really nice job with their co-op in that they really cultivate a close connection between the libraries that hire students and the university, and they vet the libraries very well, and the people, and like what the library is going to ask you to do. Like, so you end up having a very quality experience. They're not going to say, oh yeah, we're going to hire this guy and he's just going to fetch coffee every morning, and he's going to do some light photocopying. Like, they really make sure that you have a co-op experience that allows you to actually act like an actual librarian and like learn the skills of the trade on the library floor, so to speak, instead of just, not doing that. So what I did is I applied and was accepted at the Environment Canada, or what they call now Environment and Climate Change Canada library in Gatineau, Quebec. And so I, partway through, I moved to Gatineau, is just across the river, Ottawa River from Ottawa. So I was an Ontario resident, so I stayed living on the Ontario side, and I commuted across the river into Quebec, into the library in Gatineau, every day for 8 months. It was a 4-month co-op, and they decided to extend me for another 4 months. And so I got 8 months. Which was a wonderful experience. This is in May through December of 2009, and they pay you well. And so it's nice to have a paid, it's the one benefit of co-op in Canada. It's not like American internship where it's like, well, it's free. It's like you should be so lucky you're getting the experience. In Canada, you should, generally you have to pay people to do co-ops. So I got paid properly, got to have, a place to live, and it was an excellent experience. I got to really brush up on my French. I had to really get my French up to speed in a big way because I am. Was that?
You took it all the way to
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, like they obviously they didn't. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No, I didn't say much. But you had to speak French or
Oh, sorry.
did some of them know for English though, or
Yeah. So, well, almost everyone does because okay. So when you are working in a science library, so that's one thing that really attracted me to that co-op because that co-op allowed me to then work in a science library environment, and that's what I was really after.
yeah, okay,
Because I wanted to have that follow through of having like I've loved science since I was a kid. So taking science all the way through high school, all the way through university, teaching science in high school, and then transitioning to becoming a science librarian was my goal. So when you are to work in a science library in the modern world, almost anywhere in the world, basically any scientist is going to have to know English.
yeah,
Because the language of, they always often say the language of foreign, like of foreign affairs or diplomacy, the language is French, let's say. Well, the language of science is English, really. It is the lingua franca of the scientific world. So even though I was working with Francophone scientists quite often, they were kind enough to speak English with me because they took pity on my poor French. And so they would just switch into English and it was fine. And of course, almost every book they're reading, every journal article they're reading, it's all in English.
oh,
So
okay,
yeah.
oh, that's good. Yeah, that's cool.
So
Wow.
essentially what you're dealing with is an English language library inside Quebec. But like just the nature of science, like I say, is now almost universally English, even if the journal is being published, like a lot of science journals that are published in Germany, let's say, nowadays, they're all in English. In the 1960s, they might have been in German, but by now they're completely in English, even if they have German titles.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
that's really neat. You see, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, I've only know about psychology and bachelor's. That's really much.
Sure. So, I mean, maybe I should explain a little bit about like why a master's is necessary to do my job.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I should talk a little bit about that. So essentially, in library science, there is no such thing in North America as doing a bachelor's in library science.
Yeah,
The most you can do is like a bachelor's, like some universities, for example, Western media studies, so studies around like well, any of the media, like journalism, stuff like that, is tied into the library school in some sense. So like some people go and do a media studies bachelor and then they transition to becoming a librarian. But typically in North America, to be a librarian, because there's different levels. Like there's a library page, is the library page are the people who do the shelving. Like you have library assistants who do a bit more work. Library technicians have very specified training in Vancouver, Langara College,
yep.
or Langara University. I suppose they're branding themselves Langara University or College University. I'm never quite sure about exactly how the branding is, and I should because I'm on one of their boards.
I just say Langara.
Langara, there you go. Sorry, Langara. I'm sorry. I'm on one of your boards, and I can never remember how you're branded. My apologies. Langara does the training for library technicians. So library technicians have to do a 2-year program, and that can be done out of high school. But many people who are library technicians already have an undergraduate degree or 2 undergrad degrees. So Library technician is like the third level up, and then the highest level is a full librarian. And to do that, you have to have a master's degree in library science. And that's been the norm since Columbia University in New York instituted the first, I believe it's around 1909. It's very early 20th century, maybe late 19th. I'm sure someone could correct me, where Columbia, I do believe it's Columbia too, instituted the first library school at a master's level. In Europe these days, it is not uncommon that librarians often are done at a bachelor's level, but in North America, the standard is a master's degree in library science. And so what that you end up having is people who are librarians also have expertise in other subjects.
Okay.
It's not like your expertise is purely on libraries or on information as a whole. Yes, there is that expertise at the master's level, but at the undergrad level, you always have something else. And
Yeah.
that's why librarians make such wicked like team members on quiz panels, like pub quiz nights. It's great to get a whole bunch of librarians together because you have people who are like, I have a fine arts degree, I have a psychology degree, history, English, sciences.
Let's go
And
for a drink.
yeah, that's right. So you go to a pub night, and we always did very well at Western on pub nights. We always like kept coming in number two, number two, number two, but it was consistent. So that's sort of how that education is structured, and it means that you have a nice background in something. I work in a There's not a lot of people with science backgrounds who are librarians. Often it is people who have come from the humanities, like history, liberal arts, English lit, which is wonderful. It's great. Music, these are great. And that sometimes, yes, like for example, I know people who have backgrounds in music become music librarians. And these days it's becoming more and more common for law libraries to get librarians who actually are lawyers. They have a law degree, and they also are like a master's degree in library science. So they're lawyers and librarians.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so Dalhousie University in Halifax has a program for that, where you go in and you become a lawyer and a librarian. And so there is a little speciality in Canada coming now where you are expected to more or less work. Like, it's not you're expected, like you don't have to, like I have a science background, I work in a science library, that's a plus. In the United States, it's much more common that they actually will ask that you have a undergraduate or master's level of that specialty to then do that as a librarian. As well as having the master's in library science, but in Canada, it's not that picky. Like for example, at Environment and Climate Change Canada Library, when I was a co-op student, my supervisor has a master's degree in Egyptology, archaeology, Egyptology.
That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So, but working in a science library, and what the thing is that they hire people who have that inquisitiveness and the intelligence in order to learn a little bit about the science
And learn how to work. And they know research quite a bit, which is a lot of what a library does, is help people with research. Just go, hey, look, and I'm interested in this subject. What do you got for me, kind of deal, right?
Absolutely, and that is really what we call reference work, and that's what I specialize in. During my master's degree, I specialized in how to work with people on their research, and that working is called reference. And in a more traditional library, you would have a reference desk. And so someone like me would be working at the reference desk. Although currently my current position is a little bit higher than that. And we haven't got into my current position, but it's a little bit higher than that, but I still do a lot of reference, which is, as you say, helping people with their research. And so you're quite right. Knowing the subject area a little bit is a benefit, but knowing the research cycle of how people do research and how people think through research questions is far more important than knowing the subject matter itself of the.
Cool. So obviously, I guess we touched on how your education helps you in your job. Pretty much, we pretty much touched on that, so we can skip that one. You had quite a bit to say, which is good. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So, what kind of challenges in your job occur, and how does your education help you through that? Like, let's say you got a really difficult one now. How does your education actually help you deal with situations and what you're doing?
Well, the challenges in my job. Well, first of all, I should probably explain what my current position is.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
do it.
So I am the library manager at the Natural Resources Canada Library in Vancouver, British Columbia. Uh, so Natural Resources Canada is a department of the Government of Canada. In for As an American equivalent, it would be the equivalent of the Department of the Interior. So Natural Resources Canada is, broadly speaking, focusing on, well, as the name implies, natural resources. It is a science-based department that does primary research around the natural resources of the country, meaning geology, forestry, extractive resources around mining, metallurgy, development of things like steel and alloys, energy, including carbon intensive energies such as oil, gas, also renewable energies, solar, wind, hydroelectricity, and also responsible for monitoring and mitigating natural disasters such as earthquakes, landslides, tsunamis.
Okay.
These, anything that's not weather. If it's weather related, then it's Environment and Climate Change Canada. So things like hurricanes and tornadoes and the weather in general, that's Environment Canada. But natural resources is that interplay where we are things of the earth, forestry growing out of the earth, and the various things that can befall humankind through disasters because of the earth.
Yeah. So
That's it.
I guess getting your bachelor's, you go take different courses from different disciplines. That probably helps, right? Because you take a geography and you're like learning about rocks and I learned about earthquakes actually and stuff like that, and it was very interesting. It was very interesting. But
it's funny that you say that geology and geography are two courses that I did not take. I did not take earth sciences in high school. I did not take earth sciences in undergrad. I did a short-term earth sciences course when I was getting my education degree, bachelor's, because they have to try and bone you up in various subject areas that you're not necessarily conversant in, and earth sciences definitely was one for me. So I learned a lot there. So it's funny, it's ironic actually that with my science background, I am now the manager of a science library that focuses almost squarely on areas of science that I have actually no study. Before this job, I was managing the Environment and Climate Change Canada Library out of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And that was great in that library focuses on birds and ornithology. So I'm like, there's my biology angle, and also on water science and hydrology and conservation of plants and wildlife. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So like in that sense, that library as an actual reflection of my educational experience,
gotcha.
it matched very well. It matched. So when the scientists were like, obviously I don't have a PhD in these subjects, but when I'm working with the scientists, they are able to speak in a way that then I can understand, because at least I have an undergrad degree in these subjects. And so like I can follow.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit of a challenge coming to this library with natural resources, because like I say, I did not do any study in extractive technologies and mining and stuff like that. So I'll just say that my library is in downtown Vancouver, and we are situated inside the office of the Geological Survey of Canada. So the Geological Survey is one part of Natural Resources Canada, the whole department. GSC, the Geology Survey, is just that, like one of the, it's like one of the legs of the stool, if you will. The others might be like forestry and energy, and then we have the Geological Survey. And there are others as well. So yeah, so the Geological Survey is the office in which I work, and that's the focus of my library as a subject.
Sounds good.
So you were asking about challenges.
Yeah, what kind of
So yeah.
just what kind of challenges occur in your work where your education helps to get through those challenges, or do you just wing it, or you just know how to deal with challenges?
You don't, well, okay, so winging, if you're going to wing something, you must be very careful, because if I'm working with someone who is a researcher, so your researchers, I'm dealing largely with individuals who have PhDs in a subject area. So in that subject area, they're much brighter. They're much up to speed than I am in that subject area. And that goes without saying, because I have no specific learning on earth sciences.
You just I'm gotta be honest with them, obviously, at first. Okay, hey, listen, I'm not really.
Yeah, but you know, I'll tell you, like, they are, my office is really great because those individuals are amazing public science communicators. My office has a very important mandate when it comes to public science and public science communication. And so because of that, they are very adept at choosing the correct level to speak to a non-specialist, and I'm that. So then they are able, without me having to say very much, able to adequately bring it to my level, and I appreciate that very much.
That's when a person knows a subject very well.
That's right.
That person can explain to somebody who doesn't know a lot about it and be like really good about it, and being able to educate people about it, which is what I find. And that's a lot of, with librarians, a lot like that, right? You know, and that's like at first when you're doing what do you call it, presentations, at first you're like reading.
Yeah.
But then you start, if you're really into the subject, you don't really need to read anything because you know what the heck you're talking about.
That's right.
Important.
Yeah. To paraphrase Einstein, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't know your subject. So yeah, and also possibly Einstein, but to paraphrase someone intelligent, saying like someone who knows a little bit is actually quite a dangerous person. So like because there is a tendency, and I forget the actual psychological effect, but like the tendency that like people who know a little bit about subject think that they're then an expert in it, and that is not the case. So I have to be very conscious of that, because I have to. So how do I use my education? I'd like to think that I take sort of how the ancient Greeks thought about the amount of education, in that the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah.
And you have to be very humble. So when I'm working with someone who obviously is a PhD and an expert, and in some cases, really, they could legitimately be said to be a world expert in that subject. When I'm working with them, I am very conscious of not jumping to conclusions where I'm trying to overjump them. They're that expert, and they're giving me the information that they need to give me, so then I can then help them. So it's a two-way street.
Okay.
So I use the best science that I have in my head from my own experiential tacit knowledge, and then also my explicit knowledge of what I have learned in education, like by going through like education at university. I then use that information and I try and then understand. Is basically you're understanding world systems, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
Like they have a world system of which they need help. I am coming in with my general scientific world system and the world system of how to operate a library. And I am trying to then bridge those two worlds, if you will. And in such a way that we're not getting any signal noise, where I am able to understand what they're asking for, and then it's an iterative process. Okay. So like my education takes me so far, but then I have to use the skills. So it becomes from just knowing stuff to skills. So
Yeah.
proper librarianship, if you're to do like reference help, to really help someone with reference,
Yeah.
it is a skilled process. It is a process where you are listening and intently listening to what they're saying, and then you are feeding back in a non-judgmental way. I'm hearing this. It's a very open process. It's not very closed. Like, for example, if someone said, I like cats. You want a book on cats? Okay, here's your book on cats. Like, the person has only said 3 words. I like cats. You can't take 3 words, if this is in a public library, say, jump to a conclusion about what they want.
Okay. Well, what would you say? Why are you here today? I was just wondering if I could help you. Is there anything you need?
Yeah, exactly. You start, it's right. I mean, this is what, so this process is what we call the reference interview. And it is explicitly taught to you when you learn reference, which is a mandatory course. And then I did specialty courses on top of it. But like, it's a mandatory course in the master's program at library school. And it's a little bit awkward at first because it almost feels phony in a sense, the way you talk, but then it becomes very natural. So yes, you do say something like, hi there, how are you doing today? Oh, fine, they say, and then you're like, oh, okay. Can I help you find anything? Almost like you're working retail, really. And then in some ways, it's very like a retail situation. If you ever worked retail, it helps you go a long way to the skills. And I see that you know what I'm talking about.
Retail. I've been retail for 6 years.
That's right, right?
It's you got to talk to the customers a little bit, make sure they come back. You know what I mean? You got to say, hey, how's it going? What's up going? Hey, how's your day? And then you walk toward something, you go, hey, how's it going? How's your day going so far? And is there anything else kind of deal?
Yep. So that's actually the flip side. It's interesting when you say you want the person to come back. So when I'm talking about dealing with people who have PhDs, sometimes you're also dealing with people on the flip side, people who maybe, for right or wrong, they feel they are undereducated and that they don't actually have a lot of skills and they don't have a lot of learning. And quite wrongly, they think that the librarian they're dealing with, they're going to waste the librarian's time. I actually get that all the time.
Yeah.
And I even get that from PhDs. They think that they are wasting my time by bringing their information concerns to my attention. And I have to tell them, I'm like, this literally is my job. You are making my day by approaching me and asking for help.
Yeah.
And people will sometimes say, oh, I know this is a stupid question. And I know people, I'm just like, it's really, I said, it's not. There's absolutely nothing you can ask me that's a stupid question because it's going to help you today. So let's start there. And then, when you say talking to someone and making them come back, you want that to happen from people who are your experts, but you want that to also happen from people who feel intimidated coming in. Because remember, there are lots and lots of people who have had negative educational experiences in school, in any type level of school. From when they're little kids all the way through. And so they come into a library, they see that as an unstructured educational arena. And that can even be more unnerving because in a library, you don't have that structure. Like, I mean, there is structure in the books on the shelf, but the space is open and it's very inviting. And sometimes it's like people almost don't know what to do with themselves. And so that's the value of having a librarian and a library technicians on site, because you can help guide people and work with them. So you're not working at them, you're working with them, and you're using your own education, however, and your own skills to help them get from where they are. They might be standing on an island of what they know, but they see another island that they know there's a piece of information there. And you're going to help build that bridge with them to get them there. Now, even though in the physical world, that might just be you listening to them and walking down past rows of books and again, selecting the right shelf.
Yeah.
It might look that simple, but you are actually taking an intellectual journey with the person. And I know that might sound like I'm like making it sound more grandiose than it is, but at the basic level, you are working that process through. And for some people, it can be quite emotional, depending on the topic. And part of the training that you get in master's degrees, in one of my course, was on dealing with sensitive topics and topics that are very emotionally laden for people. Because in a really good library, you have controversial subjects. You have subjects that you personally don't agree with. Like if you are running a library that contains books that it contains no books that you don't agree with, you're not running a good enough library, a broad enough library. There should be almost something in a good library to offend everybody, right?
Okay.
And so that's you are helping to allow people to access controversial and emotion laden information sometimes. And that is to do it in a sensitive and compassionate way takes a lot of practice and a lot of skill. And that's a very careful process as well. So I never take, you see, that lady who came in who said, when I use that example, I like cats. And if you had not listened further, she might have said, my cat has a tumor.
Okay.
And I think my cat's dying.
Yeah.
And so as a librarian, it's more than just what the book is on the shelf. Okay? Because yes, I could be like, oh, okay, like cancer with pets and things like that. Like, and then from what sense? Like from dealing with it emotionally. But as you talk more, maybe you find out I can't afford a vet bill.
Yeah.
And so it's more like you're like, oh, I see. So then what you're trying to do, and this happens more in a public library. I'm working in a very scientific library. I don't have to deal with this type of emotional stuff too, like this type of topic.
Yeah,
but like if you're to be a compassionate public librarian, you would also understand and know how to get that person assistance from outside the library in maybe there is an animal care clinic that is less expensive, or it's more affordable for them, or could even be free for certain things, or like you have to then like
a veterinarian school.
yeah, or possibly yes, a vet. That's a wonderful idea. And so like you see, how does your education help? You have to have that wherewithal to be broadly educated. Like, so for example, you might say to yourself, I want to be a librarian that just works in a special science library that just deals with rocks. Essentially, like that's what my library is. It's a library that deals with rocks. But when I did advanced reference skills training at my master's degree, my professor said, I don't care how specialized the library you work in, you should be reading the newspaper, or even if that newspaper is online, fine, okay. But you should be like completely well read in day-to-day current affairs. You should have a knowledge of your community. You should know who your mayor is, who your council is, what are the topics that are coming to park board, what are the subjects that are happening at provincial level politics, federal level politics, international politics. You should have a sense of world affairs. Like, you should be completely inquisitive on many subjects because you do not know what you are going to face in the actual job environment. And so if you just have your noses in books, but you are not also have your nose in your community, that lady who comes and talks about having a cat that has a tumor, you are not then connecting that person to the outside the library care that they could get. And because libraries are a free source of information, that information doesn't have to come from a book. It can come from the community. And part of your job, and part of my job actually, as even a special reference librarian, is what's called referral. And so I have to be able to connect the totality of my education and my knowledge and keeping up to date with civil, local, and up to world affairs, to when someone does require outside assistance. That's called referral reference.
You could find a place for them to go, kind of deal, like go to this library. These guys know a lot about tumors.
Well, okay, yes. I mean, like, yeah, it could be that. It could be to another library, or it could be to an outside organization like a veterinarian clinic that I could look up, or like, yeah, so some sides, especially in a public library, people are coming to you as you are kind of like the 411 service.
Yeah.
Like they literally don't know where else to turn, but people know that a librarian is a friendly person who is paid to listen. And we are not paid to turn people away unless there's an obvious problem or they've become like very problematic. You try. So, sorry?
Rate customers in my work.
Yes, right. So like yes, right.
We kicked some guys out before.
Yes.
We have.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. I too have had to ask people to leave, and it's something that I've had to do a couple times in my career, and it's very unfortunate. I always remember it, and it's in some ways I'm like, what could it's always good to be reflective in your work, where you say to yourself, what could I have done better?
Yep, I feel the same way. I've done that before, where I'm like, wait, maybe I should have said something a little different to this gentleman. Perhaps you would have stayed, or perhaps maybe you would have been able to figure out where to get it from.
Yeah.
So,
There's a lot to be said for that. And being reflective is something that really got started for me in my education training. Becoming a teacher, they made us keep journals, like handwritten diaries, like about our education practice, because we had to turn it in. They're for marks. So like, you have to be careful what you're writing in your diary, right? Like your diary is about your education practice, not about your private and your personal life.
yeah.
But like it was done on purpose to make you think about your work and how you can improve your service. That's skill.
Yeah.
And so much of it is being a good listener.
Excellent. Yeah. That's great. That's awesome. Though I just gotta look at my question sheet here. So
I know we're kind of going all over the place. It's a free form discussion, which is okay. I'm comfortable.
Okay. Yeah, we talked about your path basically, and that's good. That's awesome. So what's your next endeavors when it comes to education? Are you just waiting to take some courses where you work, or what's going on with it? Like a PhD maybe, or does it matter to you?
Well, I probably see the problem is that you should never do a PhD just for the letters PhD, or for the doctor in front of your name. There is no way that it is worth that. Like that is like, I would rather go and pay $150 and put a vanity plate on my car than to necessarily do a PhD for the reason of getting a doctor in front of my name, because it has to be more than that. It's something that's so much work, and that you have to have such commitment to, largely unpaid. The answer is no. I probably won't do a PhD. It's something that I have had the honor of having a university approach me about, but I have so far declined, because a PhD in libraries really starts taking you out of being the librarian and moves you into the research and teaching at the university, which is fine. I mean, of course, I'm an educator by training. So like, that's not out of the cards, but like, it's something that I am not seriously considering, and I probably wouldn't almost ever. You know, one interesting thing about learning to become a librarian is that it kind of breaks you from ever doing formal education again, because you become so adept at finding information for yourself, like in stacks, like or online, like whatever format you use to find information, you can, like, literally as a librarian, you can literally craft a whole educational program for yourself. Essentially, like, you could do enough research and figure out, okay, this is what I need. And plus, so many universities have MOOCs, massive open online courses, right? Where you can go and like
learn stuff,
And
It's like do homework or not even do homework, just take notes and just enjoy it actually.
yeah. You can sign up for the great courses online. There's so many different ways to learn, or just read books. There's so many books to read. There's so many books to read. Sign out books, everyone. Use libraries. They're great. They're great. They are the most wonderful free resource a community can have is your library. And not just for books, but also for the online ebooks, whatever, online connections, going to the library using a computer, going to the library to meet someone, of course, like not really possible during COVID, but notwithstanding, a library is a great place to have another place for a community to meet. It is a community social space as well. So, that for me, saying that education wise, I don't really see the focus where I'm going to say, oh yeah, I'm going to do another degree because I don't feel like paying tuition and writing exams anymore. Like I feel like my dreams, like having the dream where you wake up where you feel like you've missed an exam or you haven't attended class all semester, those classic dreams that I still get.
Nightmares, hey, just to let you know, I have those nightmares too where I go to a test, I'm like, I didn't study.
Yeah.
And it's a nightmare that occurs all the time to me. Like,
yes,
maybe every well, not every day or anything, but every once in a while, I just have the nightmare where I'm like, oh, come on, I'm going to test. And it's not because I'm naked, it's because I didn't study.
Yeah, no, and I've had that too. I have a recurring dream where I'm living at UBC again, but funny enough, I pretty much know it's a dream because I'm living in a totally different dorm on campus that I never lived in. And so I'm living there and I'm in my dream, I'm always walking to the cafeteria and someone's like, ready for the final exam today? And I'm like, oh yeah, right, that class I never went to. After September, I didn't go to it anymore. And this happens in this dream. And you know what? Honestly, that's about as close as I want to get to having that formal education for the foreseeable future. It's good in my dreams. I can wake up from it. There's no real exam. I actually honestly, to think through how many papers, term papers, exams, final and otherwise, tests, quizzes, worksheets that I've done in my life from when I was a little gaffer all the way up through high school, through 2 undergraduate degrees and a master's degree, which by the way is not 50, like that master's degree, that is not 50% for a pass. You have to maintain a B plus minimum and preferably into an A level to maintain. And if you're allowed one course, it's like you're allowed one course below 70. That's it. Like 70, like it's really, and you're not allowed to fail almost anything. It's unreal.
I think I got like a B plus average or a B or B plus average, I think. But not that
most people do, but like I know, but like it is daunting. I will say this is that if anyone is thinking about getting into library science, the career is amazing. I love the career, but the library school experience is a challenge. It is it's probably the hardest degree I've ever, it's a master's degree, and it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work.
And it's different in other disciplines. And what I really want to do is I want to get more people from more disciplines so I can talk about what it is like to do a master's there. Because my buddy Nick said, hey, talk to somebody. He's like, hey, can I do a PhD with you? The guy goes, okay. Like, well, he was a brilliant student. Obviously, he helped the guy, and he played soccer with him too, and all that stuff and all that. But I was just like, wow, that's all you do. But for some courses, some of them you have to do like entrance exams and all that kind of stuff, and like get references and all that stuff. And I'm like, geez, I don't know if I could do that, but I wouldn't mind getting my master's. But like you, I'm thinking probably, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, honestly, it's a lot of it's like I felt after doing 4 years of teaching, I felt like I still had another degree in me. Like I really felt that I was in a position both financially, and I mean, this is the other thing, is that I decided and I started my master's degree literally as the 2008 economic debacle was happening.
Yeah.
As the economic crisis was happening and like the American economy essentially tanked, as that started, I had already made these decisions. And so I'm saying to myself, I'm like, I don't even know if there's going to be a job out there for me. But I had made peace with it. Like I couldn't run back to being a teacher because I had left, I had quit, and I was sitting in class in Ontario where I wasn't licensed to teach anyway. So I was going to be working there, and just that's just how it was. So
So you kind of go and go, you know what? If this happens, no big deal. I'm doing what I want to do.
yep,
You know,
yep. I just play it along, and you know what? I always thought if I go back to education, if you have a master's degree and you go back to being a teacher, you get to have the highest pay bracket. So it's great. It would have worked out financially. It would have been fine if I decided not to become a librarian. But I wanted to do that master's, and I felt that I had that in me.
okay, that sounds pretty good. So here's your last question. The one I talked about earlier. Anyways, what would you say to yourself if you met yourself at 18 years old, just fresh out of high school? What would you say to yourself? Is there anything, or are you just like, dude, I don't need to say anything, just do it?
Okay, what I would do is you see, when I was 18, I really wanted to get into medical school badly.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do it for a lot of the same reasons that everyone wants. They're like, I want to help people. And that is well and good. And I know they always tell you in a medical school exam, like in an oral, they're like, don't answer the question, or like a medical entrance interview. Don't answer the question of why do you want to become a doctor? I just want to help people. They're like, you have to have something more than that. Well, I've never really discovered what that more was. I mean, I think helping people is still something that fundamentally I've always wanted to do. And
Yep.
whether as a teacher or as a librarian, I don't know that I've ever moved beyond I just want to help people. And I don't know that I've ever really adequately had a better answer. So for that, if I was to meet my 18-year-old self, I would say this. I would say to not be so certain of what I wanted to do, and instead have focused on a subject area that I probably liked better. So for example, I did a biology degree, and it's wonderful because I went to UBC, which is an absolutely wonderful university. It's one of the best in the world. And I I got a degree where I learned a lot about the scientific method.
Yeah,
And that's great.
it was an important time to. That's probably one of the most important things to learn, aside from how to do an essay or something like that, or do English, right?
Yes. Yes. And learning to have scientific mind, to think scientifically, to think analytically and critically has been invaluable. But I would tell my 18-year-old self that it's possible for me to do those things in other disciplines as well.
Yep.
Because honestly, I have a better love of history than I do of biology as a subject.
Sure.
And even if you wanted to be a doctor, what I didn't understand is that medical school, as long as you do the core prereqs, right? Like I could have done a minor in science, or like a minor in biology or something that would have done the core prereqs that you need for medicine. But I should have done my major. If I could tell myself at 18, I should have actually followed my heart, which would have been to do a history, arts degree in history, because that would have been more to my liking. And it's more like if I'm reading books now, I'm often reading history books. Like for my personal reading, it's usually history. And whereas I'm not sitting down to a science book, although I do read about scientific philosophy and I do all that type of stuff, but like not like I'm going to read a biology text. It's not really been my thing. And so I think that that's an indicator. And I would have said to myself to not be so sure that there aren't other job opportunities out there, and to not latch on. And that took a lesson. Like if I had to do it over again, I think I would have possibly, although the education experience was invaluable, like learning how to teach is a really strong skill. That taught me a lot about patience adaptability, being a good listener. And I feel like I would have, although if I could do it again, I probably would have finished my undergrad degree and then really had a good look at the lay of the land of the different jobs that are available, really available, and not just focused on medicine, didn't get that, then jumped into teaching. I would have really looked a bit more carefully and told myself, when you get to the end of your undergrad degree, to look a bit more carefully, go and seek those people out, see what jobs are available, talk to people. I was very shy, actually,
Yeah.
to do that. And so what it meant is that I didn't waste, there's no wasted years like that.
No.
But like I spent time moving around, and then, I feel so lucky that I finally came into a career that I really, really love. And that I've come into that career. I came into that career at least when I was in my 20s. I'm so glad I did not like stay in a area where I wasn't really happy into my 30s, 40s, 50s, like, and then you come into it very late and like, no, I feel that I got it, but I would have told my 18-year-old self to have taken the time to look at the field of opportunity better, more broader, spoken to people, because even though that's a time investment up front, you are actually saving time later on because you're able to make a more informed choice, and you are focusing then your education and your skills and your energy into a result that's more based on the experience that you had by talking to people, by shadowing, by having a mentor, by doing all those things.
Yeah, I wish I would have talked myself too, but for the most part, I kind of like to do my passion. I wasn't doing animation at BCIT back in the late 90s because I really liked animation. It was great. And then I decided I want to be a computer animator still and get some courses for drawing and all that stuff. And then I realized, I really like psychology. So you said one day that you took one or something. Like, oh, that's interesting. So I took one of like A plus. I'm like, okay, cool. And I really liked it. I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I've just got a bachelor's in psychology, but it was very interesting to me. And this is kind of why I'm doing my show a little bit. So I learn more about education and learn about people's skill sets and stuff. And you've done an awesome job. I appreciate you coming here today and just laying the information, and I appreciate that very much. So, Warren.
Thank you, Jamie. It's been a pleasure to be here. And I mean, laying down the information is sort of my job. If anyone's interested.
It's really weird though. At the same time, if you really want to help people, you could probably get a job for 14, 15, 16 bucks an hour at a PetSmart or something like that. I mean, some people have passions in that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No. Okay. So actually, that's a very good point. So what I do is like what they would call a professional level job. And yes, you get professional level salary. Okay. But yes, I also, the ability to help people extends to everyone in society, no matter what you're doing. There's many, many, many ways to help your fellow citizens, your humankind, the environment, the whole globe we live on. There is many, many, many ways, paid and unpaid, and you make the best of it for the time that you are on Earth. That's, and so however that happens, and in many multitude of ways, it is valuable and quite possible to make a positive contribution to your community in your life.
And that's why I kind of do these videos too, because I like just saying, hey, like here's something interesting, take a look. If you don't like it, whatever. If you like it, more videos, right? I love video editing. That's what I like doing. I like figuring out things. I like animation. I still do a little bit of animation. So, but I mean, I don't do it anymore, obviously, very, very well, or like not as at the level I used to. But I like to dabble around and stuff like that. And I want to learn guitar, right? So I'm gonna learn it. And it's funny because I want to learn when he's younger. I said, I don't want to do that all the time. So now I'm doing the stuff I like after school's done. I want to do all the stuff I like. I want to learn guitar. I want to create rap music, and I'm doing that. And
Right.
learn how to do lyrics, so I can actually sound pretty good, not like Gamma or anything, Eminem or anything. But I really want to do that. So I guess we got to cut this. Yeah, I guess you got to do some stuff, huh?
Oh, I have cleared the rest of my day, so it's fine.
Okay. Well, thank you for all the information. I appreciate that, Warren.
You're very welcome, Jamie.
Gonna have
It's great to do this.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to let you go, but I might have you for another show. I don't know what it would be about, but we could chat about it if you want. And if anybody wants to be on my show, let me know.
Yeah.
Throwing it
Yes.
out there.
It is a painless experience.
All right, man.
No, it's great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed that video. I did too. I enjoyed making it, and just all the information that Warren gave us was so important and very interesting. So keep your stick on the ice, guys. See you around.